Las Vegas, American consumerism at its peak. The manipulation of the shining lights, trying to remind you how lucky you are. The extravagant, borderline dangerous food advertisements for dessert nachos a la Guy Fieri staring you down as you walk past a recreation of New York City, but somehow more depressing and also with a roller coaster installed. The sea of tourists marveling at these monuments celebrating the hubris and depravity of mankind. It's all whispering in your ear, go ahead, bet it all on black. I've only been once, but on my one-time visit, I was exposed long enough to resort to begging to get on a plane home. The constant onslaught of manipulative forces trying to funnel me into gambling my life savings started to rot my soul after just a couple days. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my trip. While I was in Rome, I did as the Romans would do, and I'm sure that Vegas is a lovely place to live if you know how to avoid the ritzy and sinful bullshit associated with the Vegas Strip. The less gambly neighborhoods I went to were very nice, like the Arts District. But imagine that there was no escape from what the average person imagines as Las Vegas. Imagine the levees designed to contain this intoxicating world of the Strip were overwhelmed and breached, and the entirety of society became Las Vegas. But not in like a fun way. No neon signs, no sparkly lights, no world-class food like Guy Fieri's dessert nachos. No hot dogs and cigarettes with your best friends as you forge unforgettable memories. No Blue Man Group or Elvis impersonators in sight. Just the mass infliction of gambling addiction and the cold indifference of a looming and invisible, ultra-wealthy class extracting the same finances that keep the lights on and roofs overhead into absurdly deep pockets without remorse. Only the depressing and devastating forces of Vegas extracted from the goofy Americana charm, not an hour drive away, not a day drive away, not at your local bar via video poker, but in your house, on your phone, on your TV screen. Baked into every component one needs to function in society, almost as if there's a gust of wind trying to blow your rent and mortgage money into a void that will only get deeper the more you venture downward. You don't have to imagine this for long. We're there, bucko, and it's only getting worse. And I'll explain the context and history that has led us to this point. Starting with more details about my super fun Vegas trip, because I know you're interested. I didn't go to gamble and blow a bunch of money. No. I went to Vegas for quite possibly the lamest reason one could go to Vegas. I went to see a bunch of washed emo bands play music I listened to in high school. No, not when we were young fest. Come on now, you know me. I'm an asshole who looks down on well-loved and celebrated lamestream music. It was way lamer than that festival. I went to the smaller, more niche version of When We Were Young. To give you an idea of what I went to, I saw Cursive play Domestica and Burst in Bloom in full. It was full of people who had back pain and strong opinions on what geographically constitutes as the Midwest, because they want to gatekeep the terminology of a bunch of malnourished white boys screaming their lungs out of their body behind a bunch of mathy guitar riffs. In other words, it was full of my people, but it definitely was not your average Vegas experience. But it was a Vegas experience. I had some great food. I saw a bunch of dumb shit on the Strip. I listened to some of my favorite music, and also, by obligation, I did a little bit of gambling. I walked into a casino with 20 bucks. I found the dumbest looking slot game that I could possibly find. The one I chose had a farting skunk on it who took skunk shits everywhere, and I lost that $20 in like 30 minutes, and then I ate at Guy Fieri's restaurant. Although I didn't have the dessert nachos. I made that part up for dramatic effect. Although, I'm sure if dessert nachos exist, Guy Fieri's restaurant would be the establishment to sell them. It was a pretty fun experience, and I love that trip for many reasons, but I was often reminded that Las Vegas is a very sad place for reasons that you would be able to guess. After I lost my $20 to the farting skunk game, I went to the casino bathroom to take a righteous piss, and I heard a grown man crying from inside a stall. Never a good sign. I don't think he was crying because he spent $35 on just okay garbage can nachos like I did. I don't know why he was crying, but if I were a betting man, I would say it was because he lost everything due to a horrifying and life-destroying addiction and found out that rock bottom can get much deeper. Or, you know, maybe like cheated on his wife or something. I don't know. Either way, gambling addiction is particularly unique and concerning because it's one of the most invisible addictions out there. And what I mean by that is that someone's life could be collapsing around them due to said addiction, but their friends, Colleagues, co-workers, and family members wouldn't be able to tell until things got nuclear. There are tells. Gambling addiction usually comes with certain behavior characteristics that if they let you notice, you can spot said addiction. Not having fun while doing normal, low-stakes gambling, becoming irritable while gambling, not being able to walk away when down, asking for money to gamble, and other behavior in the same realm. And it's very easy to hide the sign. It destroys families. And it's magnified by predatory figures and systems who are pushing it beyond what it's supposed to be, a fun little game. Instead, hyping it up to be, with a little bit of luck, an easy and godsend way to go from rags to riches and have the greatest night of your life with a never-ending dopamine rush. You should never view gambling as, oh, maybe I'll win $1 million. You won't! I mean, like, yeah, maybe you will, but like, if we're being real, you probably won't. But that doesn't register for some people, and they take it past being a game into the territory of a business venture. Now, on paper, casinos and bookies might agree with what I say when I say that it's a game that shouldn't be taken seriously, but they really want to say the opposite. They want you to feel lucky, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but gambling has been inching its way into every conceivable facet of existence, and the cost is, in fact, many people losing everything they own, which is all marked as an externality that is necessary to getting stinky rich, like the farting skunk. What we need to remember whenever we talk about gambling is that the house always wins. Whatever form it takes, it is always designed to rake in profits and wouldn't exist if that weren't the case. There's always a reason a force may encourage you to gamble, and it's not because they genuinely want you to make money out of the goodness of their hearts and, exploit an exploitable system. It's because they want to transfer money, whether it be expendable income taking up space in your wallet or your child's college fund, into their pocket. And the state and local governments want this too. Gambling is political. In the US, the state and local governments make tens of billions of dollars from sanctioned forms of gambling altogether. Yeah, some of that money goes to support people with gambling addiction, but by no surprise, not much money goes into preventing gambling addiction from occurring in the first place. Oh gee, I wonder why. If it is illegal and absurdly profitable to harvest and sell human blood, the people who profit from it probably would rather put a band-aid on you after bleeding you dry than to not bleed you dry at all. In 2021, gambling tax revenue was reported at over $35 billion. Casinos, bookmakers, and general gambling profiteers of course make money from their ventures as well, and there are middlemen who make money. The figures who are running and organizing services that make gambling as accessible as possible, a recent frontier they cornered being online and mobile betting. Together they form a trifecta of mutual interest where they manage to deregulate, skirt regulation, and devise loopholes and workarounds to rebrand gambling. Let's talk about sports betting. Picture this. You're sitting around watching football and maybe you think of yourself as a whiz at the old sports analytical stuff. You got that special sauce, untapped potential. Maybe you make really smart calls in your fantasy league. Maybe you do some harmless betting with your friends where you win a bunch of silly little gambles where you get $10 or the loser has to take a shot at Tabasco sauce or something. And you see this DraftKings commercial, seeing this guy on screen winning big, telling a story about how his life was changed from sports betting. They took their skills, their information-based predictive abilities to claw their way out of middle or lower class. And now they have a Bentley and a happy life. And you think to yourself, look at this dipshit. I'm way cooler and smarter than him. I bet I could buy a Bentley. So you give it a try. Maybe you win a little, maybe you don't. Maybe you're having some fun. Maybe you're having lots of fun. Uh-oh, you're down. Not down by a little, not down by a whole lot. Maybe you're down like a couple $100. And you're at the crossroads and you reflect. You hear stories about all these schmucks who thought that they were gifted, but it turns out they weren't, and they made bad calls and slowly got addicted to sports betting and lost all their money. But not you. Those people are fucking idiots. You know you, and you know that you can outsmart any AI system that this gigantic industry throws at you. You're awesome, and you're smarter than any of those schmucks who ruined their lives by irresponsibly betting tons of money, and these push notifications that they send you are looking perfect. Like golden opportunities. This isn't about having fun. This is about reclaiming your dignity, making things right, getting out of the hole. And hey, if you end up at the top of the world with a Bentley at the end of it, that's pretty cool. I'm not going to continue because this part of the story is where a lot of people watching can easily predict that things are going to start rapidly falling apart. This certainly isn't everybody's experience with sports betting, but it's all too many people's experience. Seeing the success stories, seeing celebrities attach their faces to these services, it all makes it seem pretty legit. And perhaps the most intoxicating component to all of this, unlike regular betting, sports bettors feel like they have an edge. It's not random chance like a slot machine or a roll of the dice. There's calculations that you can make, and it sometimes make you feel like more of a day trader making informed decisions based upon statistics and trends rather than pure luck. But remember, the house always wins. In 2024, the US sports betting industry made nearly $14 billion in revenue, handling about $150 billion in bets. In 2018, the Supreme Court legalized sports betting as a result of Murphy versus NCAA. Some very concerning data has emerged since then. For example, the introduction of retail sports books led to a 33% increase in online searches for gambling addiction help and resources. When online sports books became available, that 33% spiked to 61%. This isn't all that surprising. There used to be physical barriers to this stuff. You had to be at a place with machines or at a casino. Now the casino is in your pocket. Remember what I said about gambling addiction being hard to spot? It's a lot harder now. You could do it while silently tapping on your phone. Not to mention, sports betting is completely embedded into sports entertainment. Forget the onslaught of DraftKings commercials. ESPN created a DraftKings rival called ESPN Bet. This was operated by sports betting company Penn Entertainment. Yes, you are getting sports betting right from the source. This was, of course, heavily advertised in ESPN's programming, but they also implemented betting features directly into the ESPN app. ESPN Bet is no more, but the sports betting integration into their programming and apps is here to stay. You can now see odds, wagers, and other betting-related information alongside each sports game. If you are a sports fan, this is inescapable. And you better believe that sportsbook CEOs are dancing little jigs right now over the idea of all of this wearing people down to fall off the wagon. And of course, this has had an effect on the culture. People are currently gambling more than they have ever gambled in the fucking history of humanity. For a lot of young men, it's in their group chats. It's talked about by their water coolers. It's overheard in bars. It's an omnipresent force. And the mindset is really fascinating. Like, I think of this like an infection. The people who get hurt from this, they often know that this is a predatory industry. They know that gambling is dangerous. They know that very few people actually make good money off of sports betting in the grand scheme of things, but they think that they're different. They think that they are an exception. They think that they can do research and come to the conclusions rivaling that of professionals, or even succeeding at seeing the missing numbers and trends that whole-ass sports analysts who dedicated their academic and professional lives to understanding sports fail to see. You would expect people to naturally catch on, but things are getting worse, even outside of the world of sports betting. I'm talking about huge streamers who already have a gigantic audience of young people. Between sports betting and this kind of entertainment on streaming platforms, think about what kind of damage all this does to children's developing brains. Plenty of people have talked about this specific subject, so I'll take it past sports betting. There's a lot of influences that push people into gambling that aren't exactly gambling, and I think that it's an important point to make here that the definition of gambling, it can be extremely blurry. So remember what I said about sports betting being different from pulling a lever and crossing your fingers for a jackpot? So if I get drunk and blurt out my thoughts about day trading being professionalized and societally acceptable gambling, and everyone gets mad at me, like, yeah, why are you booing me? I'm right. But once I sober up, I'm willing to admit that I'm kind of wrong. You have a lot more options at your disposal if a stock takes a shit than you would if your team or player or parlay takes a shit. You also don't lose money until you sell. I mean, hey, if you can't see into the future, most things are a gamble, right? But it's not just about risk assessment. I guess the question I'm asking is, when does investing become pretty much identical to sports betting? If one day someone downloads Robinhood instead of DraftKings, and they develop the same kind of addictive behavior and habits and lose a boatload of money, That's apparently more professional? That's someone taking a risk that didn't pay off, not someone who has a serious problem and needs help. And that's the thing about Robinhood. On paper, it's supposed to be a way to put financial investment and an open stock market into the hands of the people. As they say, let the people trade. That's a tweet that they made that resurfaced after they restricted purchasing GameStop stock in 2021 amongst the Wall Street bets debacle. That's pretty awkward. But the whole time that this thing has been up and running, it just feels like they're gassing people up a little bit too much. If you have no idea what the fuck you're doing, if you have a limited understanding of the stock market, and you enter it, you are going to lose your money. Robinhood doesn't want to make sure that people are making the best decisions possible. They want them to be making decisions, good or bad. Robinhood makes money through stuff like directing users towards certain stocks, and thus they ultimately make money from user engagement of the app itself, which they obviously want to drive up and up and up and up. So if a bunch of amateurs lose money, why would they care? Those people got burned by the stock market. They didn't inform themselves to the best of their abilities. And why would any executive over at DraftKings care about someone getting burned by sports betting? They knew the risks. This is supposed to be for entertainment. But is Robinhood for entertainment? No, it is for investment. Trust me, nothing about Robinhood is similar to gambling or DraftKings. On a separate note, Robinhood is now offering sports betting parlays and prop bets for NFL games. Hey, this is a respectable app that empowers the fine financial minds hindered by society, and definitely not a way to siphon money from their user base, ruining their finances and promoting addictive behaviors in the process. So you may still be against my philosophy of how when things are set up to be like gambling, it pushes people towards the same type of behavior. You may also be against my philosophy of how murky the definition of gambling is as a whole. But I really hope that we can at the very least agree on one thing. Prediction markets are de facto gambling. Content warning, I'm about to show you an ad that will make you lose what tiny scrap of faith you could possibly have had for the future of humanity pulling through all of this. And I'm warning you, the levels of brain rot here are off the charts.
Indiana gonna win, baby!
We're in Florida asking people what they put their money on! I'm all in on OKC!
Indiana got that dog in them!
Will egg prices go up this month?
I think we'll hit $20. How many hurricanes do you think we'll have this year?
Kalshi lets you legally trade on anything, anywhere in the U.S.
OKC!
Indy! OKC!
So this was obviously an AI-generated commercial, and it was promoting a financial service called Kalshi that handles prediction markets. Now, if you've been outdoors and seen how people talk about data in the last 2 years, you probably know all about these stinkers. But just in case you don't, I'll fill you in. What is a prediction market? Well, like they said in the commercial, if you have a strong gut feeling on how many hurricanes there will be in 1 year, you can put your money where your mouth is and make that bet. So, am I talking about gambling? No, apparently I'm not talking about gambling. So prediction markets are regulated by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, FEDS. They don't offer bets in the traditional sense, they offer event contracts with a yes or no outcome, and these contracts are legally treated as commodities. I repeat, they have successfully commodified predictive opinions. So if you happen to say, I think the Broncos are gonna win the Super Bowl this year, you can take it to a sports book and make your bet there, and it would go through the standard regulations. But you could also make a binary contract through a prediction market, and apparently that's not gambling. And thus, this doesn't get taxed the same as traditional gambling gets taxed. Prediction market services like Kalshi operate under federal regulations and avoid certain state regulations that would apply to traditional gambling. Although some states are fighting this, particularly when contracts relate to an outcome of a sporting event. But as of right now, in the eyes of the law, most prediction market contracts are more akin to financial trading. You might be saying, that sounds like the most cartoonishly obvious and corrupt loophole to rebrand gambling that I have ever heard of in my entire life. Buckle up, because here are some of the other things that you can bet on. Avatar Fire and Ash Rotten Tomato score. Okay. What the weather will be. All right. What Mr. Beast will say in his next YouTube video. I took a full cruise ship, filled it with Orbeez, and set it on fire. All this seems fine. Will Ghislaine Maxwell be released from government custody this year? Uh-oh. We're getting untasteful here. Real people were victims of child sex trafficking here. I'm sure that the next one won't be that bad. Will the IPC classify Gaza as experiencing a famine this year? You can bet on genocide and profit from it. Why let all the politicians have the fun from profiting from genocide? Whoever bets on this stuff, whoever engages with it, the executives who prop it up, they are sick and disgusting human beings. Fuck you. You can get absolutely fucked. Fuck these people. And fuck CNN. Yeah, obviously, but I guess now for this too. So, politically, a lot of people view prediction markets as being very useful. To remind you, prediction markets called Donald Trump winning the US election when traditional polls were saying that it was too close to call. People say that prediction markets are more accurate than polls because people are actually putting money on an outcome. Polls are famously imperfect. Accuracy depends on quite a lot: sampling, representation, reaching those who are typically non-responsive, the tendencies and biases of each polling firm. It's safe to say that Kalshi data is different from poll data, but it's kind of wild to act like prediction markets offer near-perfect data. There are some serious limitations inherently tied to prediction markets, and just because it can succeed where traditional polls fails, it doesn't mean that there's no blind spots. First of all, polls are based on direct responses and self-reports. These responses don't have the same kind of risk tied to them, both for the results and the participants. The same is not true for prediction markets, which instead pose a specific yes or no question in, say, a presidential election. Not necessarily a question of who you will be personally voting for, but instead who you are willing to bet money on winning. The more money that you bet, the stronger your answer will be. You know damn well that some of these suckers are ill-informed but still put money on an outcome. Hence the commercial. They're pretty much begging you to put a bet on something just because it feels right. Lots of these people are simply going with their gut. And that also brings up questions of who we are getting this information from and how their biases influence this data. This data is made up from uncontained and unregulated opinions of people who gamble on world events. That's a pretty specific group of people, all with their own set of biases. And this is just for high-profile stuff like important elections. For the more niche markets, this information becomes a lot less accurate and is susceptible to manipulation and imposed biases. While there are absolutely ways to manipulate a poll, it's far more likely to happen with a prediction market. And if we're talking about empirical data collection, a lot of institutions, if they had a gun to their head and had to pick one or the other, they would pick polls over this, especially for more niche data collection. This is all to say, whenever you hear about prediction markets blowing polls out of the water, that's just the wrong way to look at it. If anything, it should be used alongside polling data, not as a substitute. And that's just the data. Unfortunately, this data is gathered in an awful way that humors anti-intellectual behavior, exposes weak points for data manipulation and insider influence, and lines the pockets of the ultra-wealthy. But it seems as if CNN and CNBC don't really care about all of that, given that prediction markets are set to become part of their data integration features. Or in other words, they're the newest forces driving you to pick up a gambling addiction. Remember what I said about ESPN putting sports betting information on the screens? Now there's event betting information on the screens of news channels. What the fuck is up next? Getting children to bet on SpongeBob episodes baked right into Nickelodeon programming? Oh, it's just using available data. Yeah, doing that while the entire prediction market industry strikes up more contracts and grows to new heights as a result. Based on this video so far, it might be safe to assume that I think that the people who run prediction markets are scummy, dipshit, loser, corrupt individuals who want to set society on fire for a profit. But if your favorite flavor of gambling is prediction markets, I don't think that's any different than like sports betting or casino betting or slot machines, whatever. Unless you're fucking engaging on whether genocide is gonna happen. It's just another flavor. I'm certainly not on a high horse. I mean, but you would expect someone like Anderson Cooper to have, a rational opinion about this. But Anderson Cooper got a chance to sit down with Shane Copeland, founder and CEO of Polymarket, another prediction market service, on an episode of CBS's 60 Minutes. This thing started, and I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Cooper's probably going to take the low-rent obligatory opinion of, hey, this is unambiguously evil on multiple levels. Like, yeah, he brought up some counterpoints and made Copeland look like a fucking slime ball.
I mean, it was breaking the law.
I mean, people say breaking the law, it's like, which law, you know? So, if anything, it's incompatible.
It's incompatible with the law.
Yeah, with the regulatory matrix that existed.
But at the end of the day, when the credits rolled, I personally think that 60 Minutes did a straight-up commercial for prediction markets, if anything. Anderson Cooper's cracking jokes with this guy.
Will Polymarket reach 1 billion people in 5 years, yes or no?
It's a great question.
What are the odds on it?
I love it.
The funniest thing about this entire 60 Minutes episode is that it features an angle where they demonstrated how prediction markets are quite literally being influenced by venture capitalists and right-wing politicians who are much more friendly to prediction markets as an industry, yet these center-left protect our democracy news networks are buying into it. Trump Jr. is literally on the advisory board of both Kalshi and Polymarket. Just think about that. Think about the elephant in the room of this whole betting on politics thing. Think about what insiders can do, what kind of money they and their friends can make, let alone how they can influence this data. I would call it insider trading, but it's not that. It's insider gambling, like objectively. This shouldn't exist. The only reason why it does is because these billionaire-backed bookies who run these internet casinos with phony tech company data collection reskins are breaking laws faster than they can be enforced and are sprinting into new frontiers, beating regulatory forces to the finish line of total control. They don't want accurate data. They want your money. They want their slot machines on your phones and TVs. But here they are, right on CNN and CNBC's screens. It would be a waste of breath to call this spineless on news organizations' parts, because of course they're spineless. No pun intended, but this was all predictable. I think this should tell you exactly where we're at politically. Completely and utterly boxed in and controlled by oligarchy-sponsored tech companies cornering every market. It's another cryptocurrency. It's another promise of futuristic utopia that's obviously dystopia. It's the final Dark Souls boss of gambling. Prime Radon gambling. And unfortunately, a lot of people view gambling as a liberty. They view this as something that they were restricted from doing, and now because of this beautiful loophole, they're allowed to do it, and you should be grateful. But I'll say this again. The house always wins. This isn't about giving you power and democracy. This is about getting the public addicted to gambling on everything. This is about commodifying your thoughts and beliefs, something that many people are willing to lose money over. It's predatory, it's pure evil, and keep in mind, I like to gamble. I like to make things interesting from time to time because it's fun. I like to play poker with my friends. I like to put money on something dumb, but I do that responsibly between me and my friends. What's the difference? I won't take my friends to the fucking cleaners over a sports game outcome because I'm not a piece of shit. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of gambling. And also, there's no way that we can outright ban gambling, sports betting, prediction markets, or whatever abominable creation that's just gambling in a trench coat that comes next. That didn't work out too well when the US tried to do that with alcohol. I'm not suggesting that we outright ban gambling. But I am suggesting that we regulate online gambling, prediction markets, and whatever comes next into near oblivion. Think about the old days. Was it so bad when you couldn't lose your life savings from fucking around and tapping on your phone? Think about the future. Is it such a horrible thought to try to force these services to effectively curb problem gambling on their platforms? Or to prevent these slimy dipshit prediction market heads from classifying their gambling services as anything other than that? Keep in mind, at one point a majority of Americans opposed the legalization of sports betting. Attitudes can shift, and hopefully we can regulate this before things get worst case scenario. Take a look at us now. See how far the US has moved towards dystopia since then. Our society is slowly transforming into a collective casino hidden in plain sight. And within this hidden casino, to review, there are levels to the gambling, an iceberg if you will. The first level of hell, regular gambling. This requires being in a physical location and is rather isolated, at least compared to the other levels. Level 2, online gambling. This is gambling that you could do anywhere and pretty much at any time. Level 3, masked gambling. making non-gambling services have a near identical function to gambling, normalizing this behavior. Level 4, prediction markets. Fuck it. You can gamble on whatever you want whenever you want. Not only that, but if you do that, you contribute data, which will help research, or maybe not. Who the fuck cares? Hey, listen, we can't legally call it gambling, though. This is not good. This is not the mark of a healthy society. And who knows if we could go deeper, what could level 5 possibly be? Maybe your internet service provider will add slot machines into their pay my bill page to change that total. Maybe everything in society will be settled with gambling, like in Vault 21. All we know for sure is that given our current course, there's more gambling to come, and that's the last thing we need because things are bad. The National Council of Problem Gambling estimates that 2.5 million US adults meet the criteria for gambling disorder in a given year. That's 0.7%, almost about one person out of every 150 estimated to have severe gambling addiction. Moreover, another 5 to 8 million experience mild to moderate gambling problems. This all opens doors to other addictions and destructive behaviors, as well as depression and suicide. And there's only more of this on the horizon. Like, I'm all for people having certain liberties. I'm all for gambling responsibly because I like to gamble. But there's a certain point where we have to stop and ask ourselves, do we really need more gambling? And if so, who will truly benefit from more gambling? Because I don't think it's you. Sorry, champ. You're not going to win big. I think it's time to cash out. I do believe we can get ourselves out of this, but this is of course just more fuel for the fires of chaos that we are living through right now. Until whatever happens next, try your hardest not to fall for it, and try to guide your friends and family onto the right path. That's all many of us can really do at this point. All right, that's about enough. I gotta go and attempt to make some dessert nachos now because I'm curious. Anyways, thanks for listening to me yap about our uncertain futures. I got a Patreon, goodies and perks over there. Show me my patrons and have a wonderful day, everybody.